Who is Charles Bronson? Welcome to the Ginny Greaves Crime Files. Today's episode explores one of the most notorious and controversial figures in the British prison system, Charles Bronson. For decades, Bronson has been described as one of the most violent prisoners in Britain. Yet he has also become something of a strange cultural figure, part criminal, part myth, part media fascination. But who exactly is Charles Bronson, and how did he become so famous? Charles Bronson was born Michael Gordon Peterson in Luton, England, in 1952. His early life did not immediately suggest the extraordinary prison career that would later define him. As a young man, he worked a variety of ordinary jobs and even briefly tried bare-knuckle fighting. However, in 1974, Peterson was arrested after committing an armed robbery at a post office. The crime itself was relatively small, involving only a modest amount of money, but it marked the beginning of what would become one of the longest and most unusual prison stories in British history. He was sentenced to 7 years in prison. What followed inside prison walls would turn him into a legend of the British penal system. During his imprisonment, Peterson became repeatedly involved in violent incidents with prison staff and other inmates. These confrontations often involved assaults, hostage situations, and extensive property damage inside prison facilities. Over time, his behavior led authorities to place him in increasingly high security conditions. In the 1980s, he adopted the name Charles Bronson, inspired by the American actor known for tough, violent roles in films. The name change reflected the image he was beginning to cultivate, that of an unstoppable, almost theatrical figure of aggression. Much of Bronson's notoriety comes from the sheer number of confrontations he has had with prison authorities. Over the years, he has reportedly been involved in dozens of hostage situations, sometimes barricading himself in prison areas or taking staff hostage for hours at a time. Because of these incidents, he has spent long periods in solitary confinement. In fact, Bronson is often cited as one of the prisoners who has spent the most time in solitary confinement in the British prison system. Yet the story does not end with violence alone. While incarcerated, Bronson began writing poetry and producing artwork. Some of his paintings and drawings have even been sold publicly, adding another unusual layer to his public persona. To some observers, Bronson is simply a dangerous and uncontrollable criminal whose violent behavior has kept him behind bars for decades. To others, he represents a controversial example of how long-term isolation and harsh prison conditions can shape a person's behavior over time. This debate has continued for many years in the British media and legal system. One remarkable fact about the Bronson case is that the original crime that sent him to prison, a relatively small robbery, would never have resulted in such an extraordinarily long incarceration on its own. Instead, it was his behavior inside prison that repeatedly extended his time behind bars. Today, Charles Bronson remains one of the most recognizable names associated with the British prison system. His life has inspired books, documentaries, and even films exploring the strange combination of violence, notoriety, and cultural fascination surrounding his story. Whether viewed as a dangerous criminal, a symbol of prison system failure, or simply a deeply troubled individual, the story of Charles Bronson continues to raise difficult questions about punishment, rehabilitation, and the psychology of extreme incarceration. This has been the Ginny Greaves Crime Files. New episodes explore the psychology, history, and mysteries behind crime.